And David, you agreed we're not going to have it transcribed as the audio plays?
No, because there's an exhibit.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Yeah, and I'll ask like one or two prefatory questions.
Okay.
I want to make sure we're
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe a little prefacing when it happened, what's involved, just to orient me, actually.
Okay.
Or, you know, like a short opening statement.
Sure. Okay. We're back on the record for the second day of the hearing. And Chief, I think that when we left off, we had been discussing the statements that from Ulysses Bautista that you felt were either incomplete or untruthful. Remember those questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think we went through perhaps 4 or 5 different statements. The first being the supplement to the arrest report. That was one of them, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the second would be Ulysses Bautista's interdepartmental communication, or IDC, to Lieutenant Esmeralda Guerra. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then the third would be the statement, the IDC given in response to Captain John Freeman's request for an IDC. That'd be the third one, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the fourth would be his statements to the Office of Professional Responsibility, and that came in 2 versions, a written response and then an oral interview, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then the fifth would be Ulysses Bautista's statements to you during the final Loudermill hearing or final due process hearing. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And are there any more?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And during the course of the investigation, Ulysses Bautista, pursuant to your order, was ordered to submit himself to an interview with the Office of Professional Responsibility, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that order contained a specific date and time, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then, because of a scheduling conflict, you allowed, or in the Office of Professional Responsibility, allowed it to be reset just shortly because of my inability to be there. Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just trying to find the...
G.
2G. Okay. And so you had issued an order for Ulysses Bautista to attend an interview with the Office of Professional Responsibility on July the 7th of 2016 at 3 p.m. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you contend that Ulysses Bautista was incomplete or inaccurate or untruthful during that interview. Is that right?
His written statement to us is incomplete, untruthful, or inaccurate.
And also the interview, the statements that he said to those members of the PD, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to play for you the interview itself and see if this is what you believe to be untruthful, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's 3 o'clock, July 7, 2016. I'm Juan F. Trevino. With me is Joe Hernandez. We are with the Office of...
Just lower, just a tad.
All right. And just back on the record real quick. The audio began playing, and the person on the audio recording said that his name was Juan F. Trevino, and in the room also was Joe Hernandez. Who are those people?
They're officers assigned to our Staff Services Bureau, Internal Affairs, OPR, as we are referenced here today.
And they're the people who actually conduct part of the investigation on your behalf
Yes, sir.
into possible policy violations?
Yes, sir.
Professional Responsibility, also known as OPR. We are meeting with Officer Ulysses Bautista and his attorney, David Willis, is present. In reference to complaint 2016-029. This is the complaint is in reference to an incident that occurred on May 13, where Officer Bautista assisted Officer Zuniga at a traffic stop. And an arrest was made for DWI, and use of force was used at the scene by the officers, and you were asked to bring a response with you.
Yes.
A letter by Chief Rodriguez was given to you yesterday, and you got your response to an IDC form.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
It's 2 pages, and
Okay.
you can sign it.
Yes, sir, I'm fine. Yes, sir.
Officer Bautista, I handed you a letter yesterday regarding an order that was given to you by the chief. The letter was in reference to that incident I just described, and it reads as, on or about May 13, 2016, while on duty you engaged in excessive use of force, specifically on or about May 13, 2016, while on duty you responded to 1600 West Austin to assist Officer Luis Zuniga, who had conducted a traffic stop at the location. Pursuant to the traffic stop, Officer Zuniga placed the driver, Mr. Soto, under arrest for driving while intoxicated. Officer Zuniga placed handcuffs on Mr. Soto and placed him in the backseat of his unit. While in the backseat of Officer Zuniga's patrol unit, Mr. Soto spat on Officer Zuniga in the face. Officer Zuniga pulled Mr. Soto from the backseat and threw him to the ground. You, Officer Bautista, kicked Mr. Soto while Officer Zuniga held him down on the ground. And then there's a list of the violations that may have been, policies that may have been violated. You read all that,
Yes, sir.
and you responded to this order by the chief in your IDC.
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
And that's this two pages of IDC addressed to Chief Rodriguez.
Yes, sir.
And it's typed by you right now. You submitted a report to IDCs, and now this responds to the order from the chief. But I would like for you to tell me, in your words, what happened at that incident.
Can I remind?
No, I would like for you to tell me.
Well, okay, I was working in the downtown area on that date. And I heard Officer Zuniga conduct a traffic stop. The vehicle was going the wrong way against traffic, and Officer Zuniga proceeded and conducted a traffic stop. After he made contact with him, I heard Officer Zuniga running him and everything. I could see him from a distance, but he was by himself. So then, Officer Zuniga later on takes the driver off the vehicle and he began conducting the sobriety test while I was still standing at 17th and Austin. Officer Zuniga was conducting the traffic stop over here by the 1600 block of West Austin. So then, after moments later, I noticed that Officer Zuniga didn't have a roll by. So then I proceeded to go assist them for his safety. Once I got there, Officer Zuniga continued to conduct the field sobriety test, and the gentleman, Mr. Soto, began to become vulgar, telling him stuff such as he was ugly and whatnot. I don't know what else he told him at that time, but Officer Zuniga asked him if he wanted to do the breathalyzer test. He refused, and so he told me he didn't want to do the field sobriety test. So then Officer Zuniga told him, you know what, he was being placed under arrest for DWI. At that point, I had not intervened in Officer Zuniga's traffic stop or investigation. Officer Zuniga then placed him in the backseat of the unit, and as he was about to put his seatbelt, Mr. Soto spat on him. Next thing I remember was Officer Officer Zuniga took him out of the unit, and he was on the floor, and he started, in my eyes, it appeared to be he was still being combative. So then, what happened, what I saw, what I felt at the time, was that if he kept continues being combative, he could have spit on me. And I feared that, you know what, this guy's already spitting on people, he's being combative. And from my experience, the 4.5 years that I've been there, it could have escalated a lot worse. So then my next thought was, my next reaction was to try to get him to comply. So then I stepped back and I jabbed him with my foot in the oblique area, not wanting to cause him pain, not in a malice manner, but trying to using the necessary force to get him to stop. Once he stopped, Officer Zuniga told me, you know what, call a supervisor so we can get a red man suit and prevent him from trying to spit on somebody else or trying to hurt himself by banging himself on the cages like it's happened before. After that, the supervisors got there, we placed a red man suit, and then we transported him to the jail section.
What you just explained right now, Bautista, was that the same thing you wrote in your first IDC when you wrote it?
I don't recall like the first IDC. If I can see it, I can tell you exactly what I wrote on it. I don't want to lie about it either.
But you wrote one IDC.
I wrote an initial IDC when, after the arrest, Lieutenant Guerra asked me to write the first IDC in reference to the harassment on the public servant.
I didn't get that. You wrote the first IDC and then you were asked to write another IDC for another?
Yes, that night, Lieutenant Guerra asked me to write an IDC, which I did. And I believe it was pertaining to the supplement, or it was a supplement and the IDC that I had to turn in that night. Second time was when Captain Freeman asked me to write another IDC. And then I believe this is the third IDC. Captain Freeman asked me to write an IDC trying to be more explicit or explain a little bit more on what happened that night.
Your first IDC and your supplement to the report, they're the same, right?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know.
This is your supplement?
Okay.
This is your first IDC?
Okay.
You can compare them if you want.
These two. These two are the same. Supplement to this IDC that night.
The supplement and your first IDC are the same.
Yes.
Well, keep it if you want, because I'm gonna ask you to compare this one to that one. This is your second IDC. Is your second IDC the same as your official report, supplement to the call?
No,
And
no, it's not.
what is the difference?
The difference is, on the second IDC, they asked me to explain more of my action, my reaction towards trying to, I guess, properly, stop Mr. Soto from resisting or swarming.
I didn't get that. They asked you to write a second IDC?
Yes, to be more, to explain my action or reaction towards me jabbing Mr. Soto.
And when you say jabbing, what does that mean?
The jabbing would be because a kick for me would be like I'm kicking a soccer ball or a football. My intentions weren't to try to hurt him or try to kick him as hard as I could. My intent, I jabbed on my foot in the sense that it's like skiing. When you go skiing, you move your foot forward. I did cock back. My foot never left the ground, and I jabbed him like a quick. I mean, a quick jab too, like not a hard kick, but it was a kick.
But when you say jab, you're talking about you kicking Mr. Soto, right?
In the oblique area, yes, sir.
Now, why was that not in your official supplement to the report?
Because they asked me to write for the stuff on the criminal aspect, like what was going on and everything like that. I mean,
Well, were you jabbing him? Wasn't that going on?
I didn't jab him repeatedly. I didn't jab him with multiple times. I used my PR-24. I didn't use anything like that. My thing was just trying to restrain him, trying to comply, and that was it. Now at the time, I know it was super late. I don't know, maybe I missed it, or maybe I was tired. I have no idea why I didn't do it at the time, but it was brought to my attention, and that's why I'm saying it now.
So now in your third IDC, in your response to the chief's order to respond to this incident, you included the,
Jabbing him.
and again, when you say jabbing, you're talking about you kicking Mr. Soto while he's on the ground on the oblique area. What is the oblique? What does
The
that mean?
outer oblique area would be more like towards his hip, bottom, where his love handles. I don't know if you want to call them that, or maybe where the side of the stomach, the outer part of the stomach, the exterior part of the stomach.
In your supplement and in your IDCs, you describe Mr. Soto. This is what you put down. So Mr. Soto began to move from left to right, attempting to impede Officer Zuniga from conducting a proper search.
Yes, sir.
Did Zuniga tell you that?
No, sir.
You
I saw it.
I don't remember Zuniga writing that in his report. I was just wondering why you wrote it in your report.
I wrote it because once Officer Zuniga told Mr. Soto that he was being placed under arrest, Mr. Soto's demeanor completely changed in an aggressive manner. So then Officer Zuniga was trying to conduct a search, and at that point, Mr. Soto started becoming more combative, and he didn't want to be arrested. So to me, he was doing whatever he needed to do, like to avoid getting arrested.
And I understand that, but my question is, how come you write it in your report? Did you have your hands on Mr. Soto at that time?
No, sir.
Was he impeding you from something?
No, sir.
So my question to you is, why did you write it in your report when when Officer Zuniga did not have
Because
that
am I-
problem with Mr. Soto?
Well, I was a third party, and I could see everything from the whole picture, from what I can see. And I was describing Mr. Soto's behavior, how it began, or it escalated from being cooperative to actually becoming not a point.
Did
that-
Officer Zuniga tell you that he was being
No.
impeded by Mr. Soto's?
No, sir.
So you just assumed that,
I didn't assume. I saw what was happening, so what I wrote was what I'm seeing at that time.
but you're saying he was attempting to impede Officer Zuniga from conducting a proper search. Was he not able to conduct the search?
He was attempting. I mean, he has him against the unit, and he's searching him, and I'm seeing Mr. Soto moving from left to right, not wanting to get searched.
Then your IDC says, suddenly Mr. Soto lunged at Officer Zuniga. How did he lunge?
From what I saw at that moment, Officer Zuniga, he's a big guy. He goes in to put on the seatbelt, and then I just saw his partial head from Mr. Soto's, I guess when he went like that, like when he spit. To me, that's a lunge. In my eyes, that's a lunge when somebody kind of cocks back or spits like in a forward manner. That to me is considered a lunge.
Have you ever sat in the backseat of a unit?
No, sir. Well, not in this.
Just to do a search? You don't do searches in your car?
Yes, sir, but I don't sit in the back.
You don't get in the backseat to do,
I inspect my vehicle, but I don't sit in it. I lean into it.
can somebody lunge from the backseat of a unit?
It considers what other people perceive lunging. I mean, lunging to me would be any little movement forward.
Officer Zuniga removed Mr. Soto from the backseat of the patrol unit. Mr. Soto fell onto the ground. How did he fell into the ground?
All I saw was one motion. I mean, what I saw was just one motion. After that happened, just to come out of the car or the spot.
But you say Mr. Soto fell onto the ground.
Well, I didn't know how to describe it better. I mean,
Can you try to describe it right now?
I don't know how you want me to explain it. The best I can explain is that happened. He spat on him. I was gonna just took him out, and he was on the floor. Next thing I knew, I don't know.
Once Mr. Soto was on the floor, Mr. Soto continued to resist and squirm around while Officer Zuniga attempted to maintain control. What was he doing? He was handcuffed, right?
Yes, sir.
He was face down, face up. How was he squirming that he was out of control?
I don't remember exactly how his position was, but what I do recall is that he was swimming around. I mean, somebody on the floor can always kick you in the midsection or can always do something else on the floor. Just because they're handcuffed doesn't mean that they're not combative or you can't get hurt. Another thing is that if this gentleman already spat, I mean, what's to say, like, what else is he gonna do? From my experiences back then, I mean, I have 4.5 years there downtown, and I've seen, like, gone to almost gang run over, to getting assaulted, and it escalates from one point to the next. I mean, these people are drunk, they're not in their rational state of mind, and therefore, I know that Officer Zuniga's been there also for quite some time, and we know how it escalates to that point.
So, do you have procedures that you're supposed to follow when stuff like that happens, or you just make it up as you go along, or?
I don't make up any stuff. What I can tell you is I reacted a certain way in reference to my actions because of what I've experienced. I'm not saying it's the right I'm not saying it's the right one, but that's how I reacted.
Then it says, I then attempted to help Officer Zuniga control Mr. Soto from being combative. He's being combative. But you don't know how he was on the floor? How do you know he was being combative?
He was being combative because he began squirming around. And when somebody starts doing that, I mean, Officer Zuniga, we know he's a big guy, but either way, I mean, nobody knows if this gentleman was on drugs or what, because that could also be a factor. We didn't know at the time. All I know is that he was being combative, and so therefore I did what I did, and Officer Zuniga did what he did. I don't know what else to say in reference to that.
Did you get trained to do what you did?
Did what I did in what aspect?
You're talking about how you kicked him, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm asking you, did you?
Nobody has ever trained me that way. No, sir.
So when I asked you, because you know how people get out there and you gotta do what you gotta do, I'm asking you, do you just,
I didn't get trained.
do you not follow procedures and training procedures on how to use force and all that?
In training, no, sir. I wasn't that trained like that. Like I said, it was my reaction.
So your reaction to control Mr. Soto was to kick him.
To jab him, yes.
And then it says, as I attempted to get a hold of Mr. Soto, so he was standing up now?
No, sir. You see, when he was on the floor, I attempted to help put hands on. I noticed that he was still moving around at the time. So I feared that if he already spit on Zuniga, he could possibly spit at me too. So then my next reaction was try to use the necessary force, and I reacted a certain way, and I jabbed him. After that, he began to comply.
Kicking is not a necessary force in our use of force training, right?
Yes, sir. I understand.
Because you say I used the necessary force.
And from what I used the necessary force in what I thought at that time or what I reacted.
That's why I asked you, you made up your own use of force technique for that incident.
For that incident, I prefer to have done that than use a PR-24, if that's what you're saying. I mean, I wouldn't want to be hitting him with a PR-24 trying to, on the green areas. I think that would have been worse. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to cause him. I didn't do it in malice terms. PR-24 is going to hurt more than my running tenny and my jabbing, you know? So my intent wasn't to hurt him. My intent was just trying to get him to comply, and that was it. But a PR-24 would have hurt him. At least I think in my
And what is wrong to use the PR 24?
Because I thought at that time a PR 24 would have hurt him.
Isn't that the purpose of the technique?
To inflict pain?
For compliance?
Yes.
So I don't understand why you're saying.
Because I didn't wanna enforce that much force on him with a PR 24.
Let me go back to the, you say you don't know how he was on the ground, whether he was face down, face up, you just know.
I wanna say, I don't recall at the time, but I wanna say he was facing up. I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I don't recall.
Because here you write that you feared that Mr. Soto might want to spit on you. So if he was face down, he can't spit on you.
Yeah.
And if he's face up, how tall are you?
5'10".
How, you think he could have got you?
You see, that's a very good question right there, because as if you read before that, I want to put hands on, so therefore that puts me at maybe 2 feet 24 inches away from him, practically. So as I'm going down, I thought, you know what? It's a reaction. This guy, if I'm going down, he's gonna spit on me. So what I did was I moved back a little bit, and my foot never left the ground. I cock back and I do kick him in the weak area, away from his face, because I knew that he had already spit on somebody.
Have you seen the video of the incident, Bautista?
I saw a video when Captain Freeman asked me to write or explain more of my reaction and my action. But ever since then, I haven't seen it, and to me it's kind of vague. Not because I don't have a good memory, but because it was that quick that I saw it. I only saw it for maybe about 10 seconds.
You want to get close to
I can see it.
That's you, right? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and turn it on. I just, where in that video did you go down to grab him?
If you saw where Zuniga was at, like he's trying to get him, I kind of lunged forward, and then that's before I kicked him. That's why.
So he's face down.
You know, and that, I don't know if he was face down with a body right there, but I couldn't see because of Zuniga's big body. I mean,
So you don't know if he was face down or face up. Okay, and then
what is your question?
you were telling me something about how I didn't see. I was asking you. I didn't see the video in the video when you went down to get closer.
Yeah, I was getting closer because Officer Zuniga has it. I was gonna put hands on, and before that, that's when I checked him or I kicked him.
You know, what part of the body did you kick him?
The outer oblique, right here in the, like towards the hip area.
On the left side, on the right side?
Right close.
Do you think that your actions in
action and reaction towards this is probably not the best one I should have used. But at that time, at that moment, that's how I reacted. So I know I messed up in reference to that.
You read the letter that Chief Rodriguez issued to you.
Yes, sir.
Did you read the cause for removal or suspension part? Starts with acts of incompetency,
Yes, sir.
H2. Do you understand what the letter is? The chief is telling you, this is the incident, this is what I know about it, these are the policies and that may possibly be violated.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna go down the list.
Okay.
And the first one starts with acts of incompetency. Do you agree with acts of incompetency on your part in this instance?
Acts of incompetency, well, can you define that a little bit better for me?
Joe could probably describe it better.
The totality of the event that happened, as every,
But
did you use what a reasonable person would do? Or were you it's a basic, were you incompetent in your actions during this particular event?
I don't think so, because I feel since I've been working there for quite some time, I feel that I was competent in what I did.
Did you use the techniques and training that were that you went through?
You said a normal person would do. I mean, there's not. What can I say about that? A normal person is somebody.
But in our particular normal person, it's us, police officers. Wooden police officer. And I heard you say jab. When somebody uses their foot for anything, it's called a kick.
Okay.
Am I correct? Regardless if you didn't use much force,
Okay.
you hit a ball, you kick it, right?
Yes, I understand.
Little or no, you can try to call it a jab.
Okay.
It's a kick, right?
Okay.
Do we agree?
Yes, sir.
Would a competent, okay, I'll make it like this. Would a competent police officer have used what you saw that in this particular event?
I can't answer that because I don't know how different people would react. A person from the north side would react totally different from somebody downtown.
Okay, so now you basically know, were you competent or not?
I feel that I am competent.
Did you neglect your duty in this incident?
No, sir.
Did you know that part of your job is to take care of a prisoner? Once you arrest a person, he's under your care.
Okay.
Did you take care of this person? Did you
This person
Did
was
you
my
keep,
prisoner.
did you keep him from being injured? Did you keep him from getting hurt after you arrested him?
I didn't arrest him, first of all. Secondly, like, in reference to the prisoner getting hurt and all that, I mean, what can I say? I did it to my best to try to control him or whatever, to try to assist, but I had no point really put hands on him. I mean, I don't know what your question or what
No,
you're trying to get at.
you didn't put hands on him. That's what Joe just explained to you. When you say jab, you're not talking about putting
Okay.
your hands on him, you're kicking.
Okay.
And the reason we're here is because you kicked
Yes.
Mr. Soto, right? You understand that?
Yes, sir.
That the reason that we are here having this conversation
Because I
is
did.
you kicked Mr. Soto.
Yes, sir.
Because kicking a prisoner or any person is not something that we get trained on. So when we are asking you acts of incompetency, we get trained a certain way and then we go out there and do something that we didn't get trained on that makes us incompetent. So we ask you, do you think you were involved in acts of incompetence?
Yeah, I was acting incompetent, now that you put it that way, because we didn't get training.
We're trained to take care of our prisoners. Once we take somebody into custody, they're under our care, we have to protect them. Did you protect Mr. Soto from getting injured?
I
citizen. Your job is to serve the citizens. Discourtesy to the public. Do you feel that you may have been discourteous to Mr. Soto?
No.
Do you think that your actions were in good order to your job?
I think so.
Do you feel that you violated any policies or procedures during this incident?
Just kicking.
Have you ever arrested somebody for assault?
Yes.
Why do you arrest a person for assault?
Because they intentionally inflicted pain or try to hurt somebody else.
Do you feel that you were involved in an assault?
No, sir.
When you kicked Mr. Soto?
No, sir.
I'm still going down the line. I know you're not looking at your pages, but it's page number 3 in case you want to follow it. False official report. We have two different reports. We have the official supplement to the incident and your IDC that don't match, right? Do you feel that you were involved in submitting a false report?
No, sir.
Did you read all the policies that were listed here, but
For most of them.
do you understand them?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions on any of them?
No, sir.
Do you have anything else to say about these?
No, sir.
Joe, do you want to ask any questions?
Yeah, let me ask you some stuff. But before I ask you the question, well, I'm gonna ask you one question first. You said that Mr. Soto was being insulted, right?
He wasn't, sir?
He was being insulted. He was saying
Vulgar?
vulgar.
Is it being vulgar? Yes, sir.
He was insulting. Was he insulting you?
No, sir.
He was only insulting Zuniga.
Yes, sir.
None of the insults were directed at you.
Yes. Correct.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you a little story. 'Cause I'm a reconstructionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know that I used to be a reconstructionist. There was this particular fatality in which I was called out to, and there were 3 supposed witnesses who said that they saw this vehicle hit the motorcycle. That's basically the gist of it. 3 witnesses say that the car hit the motorcycle. I meet with the witnesses and I ask them, where were you when you saw the accident? They tell me they're walking into the business, which is opposite of the location where it was happening. They couldn't see it because they're walking into the business. But they said they heard, each one I interviewed separately because we will understand. And each one says, I heard the crash. I turned around, ran to the area, and I saw a motorcycle on the ground and a vehicle stopped close to the motorcycle. So did they actually see the accident?
No, they heard it.
They heard it. They made an inference based on observations afterwards, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But they never witnessed it, they never saw it. One of the things that I'm concerned with is that you say he lunged, you saw him lunge at Zuniga.
Partially, so.
Okay. When he was already handcuffed and inside the vehicle, he lunged at Zuniga, and you saw it.
See, from my point of view, I was there, okay? And Zuniga's not a, I mean, I'm not a super, like, I couldn't, what I saw at that point in time, from the space that I could, my view, I did see that. Like, to me, that, like you say, the kicking, any form of kick, using a leg is a kick. For me, any form of going forward is a lunge.
So now you're using the words that I used against me.
No,
But that's okay. Hold on. Let me figure this out. Again, from the perspective of those 3 ladies, they inferred something. Did you infer the lunge, or did you actually see him lunge at the perspective.
What I saw, to me a lunge would be any forward movement.
Okay. So him spitting, and you already saw the video. I don't know if you see it. He spits and then he sits back, and there's two tugs. Right? Did you see the two tugs? You were there that night. You don't have to see the video.
I was there.
There were two
And
tugs.
If you see where I'm standing, I have a different perspective from what the video
Correct.
shows.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
So
Did
therefore,
you actually see him lunge at him?
are you gonna let me explain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From my perspective, from what I saw, he lunged in my perspective because the video shows a different angle. Everybody knows if I have a forward angle, you're not gonna see a forward movement. But if you see it sideways, you're gonna see a different movement. And that's what I saw. Behind Zuniga, in the corner, over the shoulder, that's what I saw.
That's what I'm trying to understand. So from your perspective, you believe that Mr. Soto lunged at Zuniga, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know Mr. Soto went to the hospital.
I was aware after.
Do you know the damage or injuries that were sustained?
I don't know exactly what damages he obtained. No, I do not.
Did you get to see the injuries before he was taken to the hospital?
What I did see was he had a small little gash. That was it at the time. Maybe it swelled up. I don't know. I didn't see him after that.
Did you know he had a fractured skull or some fracture in the skull area?
I didn't know that.
Were your actions the cause of the injuries to that skull?
No, sir.
Would they have been then Zuniga the one who caused that injury?
I can't answer for him for that.
Okay, but you're saying you didn't cause that
I
injury.
didn't cause it.
Somebody else caused that injury, right?
I don't know how he
Who else was there?
I don't know how he obtained those injuries, like in reference to that. I don't know.
Was he injured when he was being placed in the unit?
When? The first time or the second time?
First time.
The
We're
first
talking about the very first time. No second, only what we
The
have.
first time, because the first time he wasn't injured.
So the injuries happened after he's pulled out of the vehicle, correct?
I'm assuming.
Okay. But you know that before that there were no injuries.
I don't know that.
Okay. You say you were attempting to control the Mr. Soto, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Zuniga couldn't control it?
I'm not saying that.
No. If you had to control
I
it?
had to assist.
Okay, but that's not what you said. It says
Attempted would be trying to attempt to assist, control Mr.
you didn't put
Soto.
assist. You said you were attempting to control him.
Okay.
That's what I read.
Okay.
This is a real simple question,
Yes, sir.
but it's going to take step by step. Did you kick Mr. Soto?
Yes.
Was Mr. Soto on the ground, handcuffed, when you kicked him?
Yes.
Was Mr. Soto on the ground, handcuffed, being restrained by another officer, in this particular case, Officer Zuniga, on top of him, when you kicked him?
Was it? Can you repeat that question again?
Okay, I went through step by step.
Yes.
You agreed that you kicked him?
Yes.
right? You agreed that he was on the ground, handcuffed, when you kicked him? Was Zuniga restraining him further by being on top of him when you kicked him?
So, yes, that's why I attempted to help him out.
Okay, so you kicked the subject who was handcuffed on the ground while another officer was on top of him. You think that's good? That's correct?
You see, just because he's handcuffed on the floor doesn't mean he's not a danger to anybody or you can't get assaulted.
That's not my question.
So I'm just explaining it to you, okay? In reference to him being on top, I mean, if Zuniga needed some help, that's why I helped him out. Because he was not being cooperative. If the gentleman would have been cooperative, I don't think Zuniga would have needed my assistance. So I tried to assist him.
And your assistance was to kick the subject.
You know, my assistant was trying to control him or try to make him stop from resisting.
But one of the things
And
you did
during
was
the
kick.
front, my reaction was to kick him.
Because the whole purpose we're here is because you
Yes.
kicked the subject who was
Yes.
down on the ground, handcuffed.
Yes.
You kicked someone who was on the ground, handcuffed.
Yes.
You understand that?
Yes.
We're not here because of what Zuniga did or anything else that happened afterwards. You're here because you kicked someone on the ground who was handcuffed. Did you do that? Yes. Yes. That's all.
Anything else you want to say? No? Okay. The next step is to meet with the chief of police. He will give us a date and time when he wants to see you. Once he does that, he will draw up a letter, he will give it to me, and I will call you and I will hand it to you. Okay? David? Okay. Right, then let me turn off this recorder. It is now 3:46.
There were two interrogators. The first one was Trevino.
The first one was, well, I can ask these questions of the witness.
Okay, fine.
Chief, just to identify the parties on the audio recording of the OPR interview, you had two investigators, correct?
Yes, sir.
One was Juan F. Trevino, also sometimes known as Frank Trevino.
Frank Trevino?
And then the second one was Joe Hernandez, correct?
Correct.
And then the third person that was speaking on the video, in the audio, was Ulysses Bautista, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I was also in.
I heard you in there, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
okay. You heard in there a reference to an item called a PR-24, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And a PR-24 is a baton, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that interview on July the 7th, 2016 was conducted pursuant to your order, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's pursuant to your written order, correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, I think we've established that your written order is found on City's Exhibit 2G, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the written order, and on page 6 of your written order, has some particular advisements, and I'll just direct you to exhibit on the City's Exhibits 2G, page 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Exhibit 2G on page 6 provides that you advise the Ulysses Bautista, that he maintains all the rights and privileges guaranteed by the state of Texas and the Constitution of the United States, correct?
Yes, sir.
And those guarantees relate to the Fifth Amendment, correct, or the right against self-incrimination?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And but you also provide in here that his failure to provide truthful testimony during that interview may subject him to disciplinary action up to and including termination for insubordination, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All right. So in that setting, Ulysses Bautista is required to answer truthfully those questions posed to him under threat of termination, correct? Or indefinite suspension.
Discipline, yes, sir.
Okay. And you also provide in here that, well, you advise him that those statements made under that circumstance, those statements made under the circumstance that his failure to comply could subject him to disciplinary action up to and including termination, cannot be used in a criminal case against him, correct?
That's correct.
And that's actually found in a full paragraph here. This is I guess it'd be the third full paragraph where it says, I further advise, correct, on page 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so nothing that Ulysses Bautista said in that interview can be used in a possible criminal case against him related to his use of force of Aaron Soto, correct?
Previous to today, that would be correct.
Okay.
Today we're in an open hearing and all of this is out there.
Well, that'll be a point of law for us.
I'm just saying, I want to qualify that, because if I said to you, yes, that's a guarantee that we make. Any administrative investigation we do and we order somebody is protected.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a public setting now.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a public hearing. This is aired all over the place.
Sure.
So we're no longer the sole holders of this information. So
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that you understand that.
Sure, and we'll have that fight later on.
No, I'm not fighting with you. I'm just.
Well, I think we will, right? Because I think today you issued my client a notice that the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office has informed you that a duly impaneled Hidalgo County Grand Jury has taken an action in a matter wherein Ulysses Bautista was involved with a person occurring on or about May 13, 2016, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so you actually submitted him a document wherein you notify him that you've been notified as of today that a grand jury has taken some action related to his conduct with Aaron Soto on May the 13th, 2016.
That's not what the letter says, but yes, that is what it relates to.
Okay. And who at the district attorney's office notified you that a Hidalgo County grand jury has taken action wherein he was a person involved?
Mr. Mike Garza.
Mike Garza?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you received notice of that actually yesterday, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And you received notice of that yesterday via electronic text message?
Our captain in criminal investigations was informed, and he notified me.
Okay. And so when was that complaint, well, let me ask you this. To get a case to the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office, a complaint has to be filed, correct?
We forwarded to the DA's office the DWI report and the complainant statement of complaint, the first, I think, the one-liner, I don't know what exhibit that is.
I think it would be
in your exhibit 6.
Okay.
Yeah. When he got released from the hospital and he came in and complained to the sergeant on duty, that's the statement he gave them. So the DA's office has this statement, and they have the DWI report, and they have the video that you have, which are part of the DWI report.
All right. And nowhere in Exhibit 6 does it mention Ulysses Bautista, correct?
Exhibit 6?
Yeah, Exhibit 6 of...
It doesn't mention any, what?
Doesn't mention Ulysses Bautista.
Okay.
Does it?
No, sir.
Okay. And so this is a document that you submitted as a complaint to the district attorney's office for consideration of a possible criminal action against Ulysses Bautista.
That was submitted for their information and review in that DWI case.
When was that submitted?
July or August, I forget what.
Okay, so immediately after, or very close after you disciplined Ulysses Bautista, correct?
At approximately the same time, yes, sir.
All right. And actually, really close to that same time that you sent that complaint to the district attorney's office, you also did a press release to the local media, did you not?
I did not, but the city did. Yeah.
Now, the city actually released a copy of that video, correct?
They released a discipline letter and the video with it, yes, sir.
And they also released photos of Aaron Soto, did they not?
I don't know what they did. I wasn't in the city when that happened.
You weren't in the city?
No, sir.
All right. And this does affect your department, does it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're not aware of the city releasing photos that could somehow affect the relationship of your department?
I'm not aware of what they released. I know they made a statement because at the time that we effectuated this particular action, it became a public matter. So what was released at the time was the fact that we had terminated an officer for this particular conduct, and that letter was filed with the civil service director.
Okay.
I know that the video was part of that record. So that I know was released, but I wasn't here for that and was not in the city when that happened.
All right. And so just to be clear, you learned that the Hidalgo County grand jury has taken action in a matter where Ulysses Bautista is involved as a person regarding an incident on May the 13th, 2016. You learned about that yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And yesterday was the very first day that we had this arbitration hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so even if Ulysses Bautista is successful in this arbitration hearing and he is given his job back, pursuant to your order, you're going to suspend him again, correct?
That's not what the order says.
Well, you will be suspending him again, will you not?
I have yet to determine that, Mr.
You have yet to determine it?
Yes, sir.
You sure?
Yes.
All right. So it's an open question. If he gets his job back and he is indicted, that you might keep him on board?
I may not have a decision to make at all if he's convicted. Yeah. So that's why I say we don't know what's going to happen. Right now, what we've got in front of us is a disciplinary matter on administrative rules violations.
Well, I'm asking you this question about this document you just handed him, and I want to make sure I understand this.
Well, let me explain that to you, because I didn't finish answering my question. Now, once a person faces charges, criminal charges, our administrative procedure would be to release that person without pay until that criminal charge is dispensed with.
Right.
And that's what will happen.
Right. So if Ulysses Bautista does get his job back, and if he is indicted, you will administratively suspend him without pay.
He'll be released from duty until that matter is dispensed with.
Okay. And what action has the Hidalgo grand jury taken against Ulysses Bautista?
Again, I don't know what the action is. I don't know that it's public yet. I do know that they have acted on this matter, and that the DA's office, I anticipate, will be speaking to that publicly once they're ready.
Okay. Is it your department that filed this criminal action or this criminal complaint against Ulysses Bautista?
Mr. Willis, once I dispensed with the disciplinary matter, I notified both the district attorney's office and the Department of Justice that we had a complaint.
Yes.
And that we had a videotape.
Yes.
And I let them have a copy of the complaint and a copy of the videotape, which were part of the DWI arrest, for their own review and action.
Yes. Did you submit an actual criminal complaint against Ulysses Bautista?
No, sir, I'm telling you what I gave them.
All right. And that's just what we've marked as exhibit number 6 for the grievance, and that's that one-line affidavit by Aaron Soto and the copy of the video of the dash cam or the camera from behind Luis Bautista's car. Luis Zuniga's car, right?
They were provided a copy of the incident report that speaks to the DWI arrest. That entire report that we have here as part of, which is a public record, by the way, under our Exhibit 2A. I think that's 2A, hold on a second. Yeah, all of this that is the DWI case report.
Okay.
That's a public case report.
All right.
That's an arrest report.
All right.
Okay? So the DA's office and the local Department of Justice FBI office, they were provided a copy of this DWI report. The fact that a person was complaining, this particular, in your section 2.6 or 6 that is, and part of this case report right here is that DWI video that you have.
All right. You didn't submit to the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office an actual complaint by Aaron Soto, and by complaint I mean a person complaining of another person regarding a crime. You didn't submit something like that, did you?
Mr. Willis, I'm going to say it for like the 4th time already.
Sure.
Okay. Once we acted on this matter administratively, I let the district attorney's office know that in this particular DWI case, and I submitted a copy of the DWI case report that I've already mentioned to you.
Okay.
A copy of the videotape, which is part of the case file in the DWI case. All of that is public information.
Okay.
And Mr. Soto's one-line complaint here, and I told him that in this particular matter, this person was complaining of excessive force.
Okay.
So I apprised him of that, and that was the extent of our referral to both, my referral to both the DA's office and to the Department of Justice.
Okay. And you did that relatively shortly after you disciplined Ulysses Bautista?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Approximately 6 months, give or take a few days.
6 months?
6 months ago.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. And so they finally decided to take action the day of his first day of arbitration.
That's the first time that I have notice of it, yes, sir.
All right. And during the first day of his arbitration, you actually had communications with the district attorney's office, correct?
No, sir.
You didn't just testify that you received notice from the district attorney's office?
They notified our office, yes, sir.
All right. So at least your department was in communication with the district attorney's office on the first day of this arbitration, correct?
They called our criminal investigations division and notified us that they'd acted on this particular case, and I was informed of that.
There is no pending open case against Aaron Soto at the district attorney's office, is there?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know the status of a case that you presented to that office?
No, sir.
Oh, let me ask you this. We listened to that entire OPR interview that was on July the 7th, 2016, and therein Ulysses Bautista stated that he jabbed Aaron Soto in the midsection, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then when I think it's investigator Joe Hernandez challenged him on the use of the term jab and insisted that he used the term kick, Ulysses Bautista said he kicked Aaron Soto, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's your position, at least according to the testimony here today, that Ulysses Bautista was untruthful during that interview of OPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
Chief, just a couple of
Why don't
subject.
we-
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, let's just take 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
we attempt to describe what the notification yesterday was precisely. What exactly happened yesterday?
I think it would be beneficial. I was planning to do that with in terms of a couple of questions with the chief. It may be less cumbersome to just sort of talk to you about it. I think one of the on the record, yes. We're back on the record, and the hearing examiner has asked for the parties to explain the events that were talked about in some of Mr. Willis's questions, and I had suggested that it might be less cumbersome than having a witness describe it, to simply have the attorneys present on the matter. I think one of the first things I'd like to do is to have the personnel order that Mr. Willis described entered into evidence. So I would offer it as Exhibit 3, City's Exhibit 3. I'm going to hand it to the hearing examiner. And we have.
I do have a copy.
Okay. And just by way of a description, it's a personnel order that was issued to Mr. Bautista in response to the information that the chief received yesterday concerning the activity of a grand jury looking into the events of May 13th and Mr. Bautista's role in that. There is a state statute, part of state civil service law, chapter 143, section 143.056 of the Texas Local Government Code that deals with situations where a civil service employee, a municipal police officer, or a municipal firefighter is facing an indictment for a felony or an official charge for a misdemeanor of a class B or higher. It triggers certain rights on the part of the accused and gives the head of the department certain administrative tools. One of those tools, like Mr. Willis asked about, was the ability to place the officer on a leave without pay status. The statute refers to it as a temporary suspension. The statute also is explicit in that it is not a disciplinary suspension. It's a suspension that lasts for as long as can last for as long as the criminal matter may be pending. That's the administrative tool that the chief has at his disposal when that happens. The person accused, the civil service employee who's been accused under either a felony indictment or a Class A or B misdemeanor charge, also has the ability to delay any pending disciplinary matter while that criminal case is pending. So it's got a little for both management and the employee. The employee gets the right to put everything on hold until the criminal case is resolved, and the chief gets the right to put the employee out of the department on a non-paid status while the criminal case is pending, and for 30 days after the ultimate resolution of the criminal case. And so that is a personnel order that Mr. Bautista is now under as a result of the communication that the chief's office received yesterday. I've got a couple of questions for the chief about that. Nothing very lengthy, just one or two questions. But that's, for my part, is the explanation of the significance of that personnel order. I'll open it to Mr. Willis to provide any other explanation he might.
I think that was an accurate recitation of. I called it an administrative suspension. I think that's what the term is, but no matter what, it's not a disciplinary suspension, and what it enables the affected officer to do is that at the close of the criminal case, and if there is a discipline imposed pursuant to that criminal case, to then appeal his discipline imposed, and within 30 days of the decision. So we're back right here again, if that is actually the case.
The only comment I would have on that is that that same section 056, provides that a person who is finally convicted of either a Class A or B misdemeanor or a felony may then be terminated by the department head in that case. It's a separate disciplinary charge that the chief would be applying against the officer in that case, separate from the proceeding that we're here today on. Here today, as the chief testified, we're only here on the administrative charges brought by the chief as a result of Mr. Bautista's conduct on May 13th.
So does this order affect my jurisdiction here in any way?
our position is that the chief has continuing jurisdiction to issue orders and to initiate an 056 suspension because even though he has fully
056 suspension.
056 suspension. That's the suspension while someone is facing criminal charges. The 14305. That's what I call it. A 143-056.
But let me
suspension.
make a point of order here.
Okay.
We're beyond that, aren't we?
Well, the chief has fully and finally fired Mr. Bautista as a result.
It's here.
The reason that the chief has continuing jurisdiction is that he has now put his termination at issue, and it is possible that the hearing examiner or a court sitting in review of the hearing examiner's decision may decide to reinstate Mr. Bautista, at which point he'd be back in the department. And so the chief has continuing jurisdiction to issue the orders that he needs to affect his status until the issue is fully and finally resolved and we're beyond any possibility of appeals.
I reserve the right to at least brief that issue subsequently.
Sure.
I think it's going to require briefing.
And I would ask you to do that, both of you, yeah. Okay. Chief, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
I listened to counsel's questions and your answers. You essentially told him that you submitted all the documents, whatever.
Yes, sir.
I think you said 5 months ago, something like that?
Yes, sir.
And you've had no dealings with the DA since then?
No, sir.
And this came out as a surprise to you?
No, when you say dealings about the case itself, yeah.
Well, the order itself.
Yeah. No. The only thing we know is that they finally got it to a grand jury. That's what we heard yesterday.
Okay, all right.
Okay, may I proceed? Okay, Chief, I just have a few questions regarding the I believe it was Exhibit 2G, the personnel order that you gave to Mr. Bautista to come in and give a statement.
Yes, sir.
On the 6th page of that exhibit, 2G, page 6, Mr. Willis asked you some questions about some advisories or some warnings that you gave to Officer Bautista.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the fact that he had to provide a statement under penalty of possible disciplinary action.
Yes, sir.
But that the fruits of that statement would not be available to anyone to a prosecutor looking to prosecute him for a crime.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Chief, I just want to make absolutely clear for the hearing examiner's benefit. Did you ever share the fruits of the disciplinary investigation against Officer Bautista with any prosecuting authority?
We never do. Never. Administrative matters are never shared with criminal interests.
Okay. All right, Chief. With regard to the statement itself, Mr. Willis played the statement so that, from what I heard, the purpose was to determine whether or not you heard anything in that statement that you contend was untrue, was inaccurate, or made any material omissions. And now that we've all heard the statement, is there anything about that statement that you still contend is untrue, inaccurate, or contains material omissions?
Yes, sir. And just kind of operating from memory here, there is no resistance by the individual person other than his, what I call trash talking with the officer. I believe the video clearly depicts the fact that you have a calm arrest taking place. He's walking around. He's being compliant. He's handcuffed already. There is no evidence that anything happened. The arrest report doesn't indicate any resistance at all as part of the process to arrest him. So there is no combativeness, as he calls it, going on in either the reporting of it or in the video evidence of it at all. It doesn't exist. There is no lunging by this person. It didn't happen. There is collusion. If you know, he was referring, Mr. Willis was referring to, well, he did say he was moving left to right. Yeah, look at Officer, trying to think of the other officer's name, the officer, forget. Let me get the arrest report.
You're talking about the primary officer, Zuniga?
Zuniga. Look at Officer Zuniga, and he's the one that writes in the arrest report that the individual is moving from left to right. So when he's asked about it, that's what he writes. He moved left to right. So and again, there is no explanation as to why it took 4 or 5 different attempts to gather all this information from him when he'd been under orders to provide that information, either in the arrest report, in the reports to Lieutenant Esmeralda Guerra, in the reports to the captains, in the written report to my order. No, it's not included. So there's a myriad of different things. I think that one of the most aggravating things about that particular interview is the fact that he sees nothing wrong in what he did. I don't know if you heard him, but he feels like that is the proper conduct on behalf of somebody that's in his position as a police officer, to kick somebody that's on the ground, face down, handcuffed, with another officer on top of him.
Very good, Chief. And finally, I just want to ask you a couple of questions about the role of a citizen complaint in the initiation of a disciplinary action against a police officer. Now, the review of the use of force incident, was that initiated in this case as a result of Mr. Soto having complained?
No, sir. We had the incident. You know, Captain Freeman is the person in charge of our Uniformed Services Division, and Officer Bautista is a member of that division. And in this case, in our setup at the department, the jail, or that is our detention services, our jail unit is also under the command of Captain Freeman. The jail at that time reported to him that we had a prisoner come in, apparently injured, and had been transported out of our jail, you know, following his booking because of those injuries, and that we had lost custody of him because that person had been further transported to San Antonio. So that is what triggered the inquiry about what happened to this person and why he's here. So that's the inquiry that begins to take place the first day. It isn't until he gets released that he comes over here and this person says, by the way, I was, you know, excessive force was used on me. That's all he knows. And that triggered the investigation. So the use of force is a result of the jail reporting that a person has been taken to the hospital and they've lost custody of him because he's been transported further and beyond our jurisdiction.
Chief, if Mr. Soto had never come in and filed any kind of complaint at all, would you still have a disciplinary issue to look at with regard to Mr. Bautista?
Yes, sir. We would have discovered in that process the very same set of facts that we're here with today.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes, sir.
Do you know, I don't know if you know this, when did Soto become released from the hospital in San Antonio? Do I understand the evidence correctly?
Yes, sir.
If you know.
Yes, sir, I do. It is actually in the best that we can deduce right now. It's, if you look at Mr. Bautista's exhibit number 1, page 2. The very last entry, 5/13 of 2016, 6:19.14 p.m. It says received a call from Bexar County that he had been released.
Chief, is there any requirement that there even be a complainant about officer misconduct that would prohibit you from taking action against an officer if no one complained?
There is nothing that prohibits us from taking action on our part. There is no requirement for a complainant. The complainant, like supposing that we didn't have a complainant, I would have been the complaining person in this circumstance.
Very good, Chief. I'll pass the witness.
Chief, the last category of statements that you allege that were incomplete or untruthful by Ulysses Bautista was his statements to you during the Loudermill hearing, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, there was no transcript or recording of that hearing, correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And then that Loudermill hearing spanned 2 days, right? It was the 15th, and then we finished up on the 20th, correct?
If we did it on the 15th,
Yeah.
and I asked you to come back on the 20th so that I could tell you what my decision would be. It was the 20th when I said my decision is this is my draft of the letter.
Uh-huh.
And I gave you an opportunity to read it, review it, and otherwise tell me anything you wanted to say.
Mhm.
And I also gave you an opportunity to have your client resign at the time.
All right. And so that draft of the letter is the exact same one that you actually signed and filed, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's found on City's Exhibit 1A, right?
Yes, sir.
And City's Exhibit 1A, page 5, contains certain statements that you say happened during that Loudermill hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Ulysses Bautista has been disciplined in part for being incomplete or untruthful to you during that Loudermill hearing, correct?
In part, yes, sir.
In part.
Right.
And your discipline that was imposed was termination, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, indefinite suspension.
Yes, sir.
All right, just to be more accurate. And the statements that you include on page 5 say things like, quote, my action, and then bracketed in, kicking Mr. Soto was a reaction at the time, correct? Close
Yes.
quote?
Yes, sir.
And then you also have another quote, it was the wrong thing to do, I should not have done it, but I did it, and then bracketed, close quote, Mr. Soto, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so these are statements that were given to you during that Loudermill hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And these statements then were included in your final notice of disciplinary action to the Civil Service Director, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that final notice of disciplinary action is a public record, correct?
Yes, sir.
So then you did share the fruits of an administrative investigation with the public, did you not?
I did not know, sir.
You don't think that this is right here a public document?
I believe the law makes it a public
Okay,
document.
I'm going to object. Mr. Willis is misstating the Garrity Doctrine and the requirements of civil service law on this point. My question is that she was very clear about whether the fruits of the investigation, Mr. Bautista's compelled statements in writing, any audio interview that he gave to internal affairs investigators were ever shared. He said no. Mr. Willis is aware that the disciplinary document, when the chief issues final disciplinary action against a police officer, is a public record. It's required to be filed with the Civil Service Commission. It is open to the public. The Texas AG has ruled many times, as well as the Texas courts have ruled many times, that once an officer has a final disciplinary suspension on his record, that's an open document. It may not be withheld. It may not be contained in any kind of confidential file. That's not the same as the fruit of the investigation. No compelled statement was not the same as the fruits of an investigation. No statement that was compelled to be made by Officer Bautista under penalty of disciplinary action has ever been shared by the chief, and were never revealed to the public until today, when Mr. Bautista chose to play the audio of his interview in this public hearing.
And we'll disagree with that position. It is our position that these quotations taken and actually inserted into this public record,
Page 5.
page 5
Okay.
of Exhibit 1A of the city, are the fruits of an investigation and are the basis of a termination in part. And actually, he indefinitely suspended Ulysses Bautista for making these statements during that investigation. The record is very clear that the chief made the determination to actually suspend him after these documents were created and it was filed publicly. And that is our position, and we'll have to have that fight on a later date, because it's not going to really be something that relates to whether or not the actual events that form the basis of the discipline occurred, and whether or not the discipline is reasonable. But this is something that will go into on a separate fight.
I'm happy to brief that for the hearing examiner, but Mr. Willis is attempting to have it both ways. On the one hand, he knows that if the chief were not specific about the disciplinary charges that were being alleged against Mr. Bautista, that Mr. Willis would have a ground to contest those charges and throw them out for legal insufficiency. In fact, he has raised in his notice of appeal, which is my exhibit 1C, the legal insufficiency of the charges. 1C, C as in cat, has raised in his notice of appeal the legal insufficiency of the charges against Officer Bautista, and that occurs on page 4.
Yeah, and I'll stipulate that I did raise that defense. No problem with that.
So to say that the chief had some obligation to leave out facts in his disciplinary charge is attempting to have it both ways. Either the chief presents a factually specific and legally sufficient charge against the officer in order to do his disciplinary action, or he doesn't. Mr. Willis cannot offensively use the prospect that the chief can't reveal items out of the disciplinary investigation as a way to compel him to produce an insufficient and incomplete charging letter.
That would have been a valid defense of their position had they not actually used quotations. Further, in this notice, the chief purposefully includes alleged admissions by my client. Then an indictment is placed. How else is he supposed to? This is not actually having it both ways. This is actually addressing what they're asking about. And I think that, again, the issue of whether or not these are admissible in a criminal case will be relevant to the criminal case. But I do think that there is a motive, and this entire arbitration, in my opening statement, made reference to the fact that discipline imposed on Ulysses Bautista was not because of what actually happened, but because of a political decision. And that's what these documents go to, that there was some other basis, another basis for terminating or indefinitely suspending Ulysses Bautista, and it's not because of the kick. And that's what this is all going to demonstrate. Whether or not these statements actually get to be admitted into a trial of fact in a criminal case will be a fight for another day. But in this portion here, what the chief's actions are in this hearing demonstrate the very first allegation that I made, and that is his disciplining that he imposed on Ulysses Bautista was not because of the facts. Anyway, I don't have. Did you pass the witness?
I passed the witness, yes.
Okay. I have no other questions for the chief.
I'm prepared to close, Your Honor. I do want to make sure, and this is mainly to help out the court reporter in her assembly of the record for this case. I want to make sure that we get an official statement on the record that the exhibits that have been introduced are in fact admitted into evidence.
Yeah, I was going to take care of it at
okay.
the end.
Okay.
You both acknowledged that at the beginning.
Yes.
Wind it up.
Yeah.
We get in with
The only one
transcript, the briefing, et cetera.
Very good. And the only one we haven't stipulated on necessarily is my offer of Exhibit 3, which is the personnel order that Mr. Willis talked about. I don't know if
Did he
he's...
perceive any,
No, sir.
no problem there,
No, sir.
right? Okay.
Very good. The city rests.
Okay. And
Another 5-minute break so you can, or do you want to start right away?
well, if we need a break, I can take a break.
No, it's up to you.
How about 2 and just get my witness?
That's kind of what I was
Okay.
thinking. There you go.
Okay,
Sure.
all right. Would you please introduce yourself to the hearing examiner?
My name is Jerry Staton, S-T-A-T-O-N.
Okay, and Mr. Staton, there's a white binder to your right. I'd ask you to take a look at that and go to tab 30, okay? And that's what we've marked as grievance exhibit number 30. Okay. Mr. Staton, would you please describe to the hearing examiner your education background?
Have a 2-year college degree from community college in Austin, which I obtained while I was a police officer there.
Okay.
Prior to that, I had graduated from high school in West Virginia, and 4 years in the military, the Navy. How far do you want to go?
That's about as far as
Okay.
that. Okay. And are you a member of any professional associations?
Yes, sir. A number of them, actually. The International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association, ILETA, the Americans for Effective Law Enforcement, ILEFE, I'm sorry, AELE.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
The Institute for the Prevention of In-Custody Deaths, IPICD.
You mentioned ILETA, and that is the International Law Enforcement Education and Trainers Association?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And what does that association focus on?
It's an organization that is primarily designed to provide instruction to people who are teachers or instructors in law enforcement.
Okay. And what kind of qualifications are required for membership in that association?
You have to be an active instructor teaching law enforcement officers.
Okay. And one of the other associations I think you're a member of is the National Tactical Officers Association. Is that right?
Actually, I was a member for a number of years. I have let that lapse, although I do still get information from them and keep up with the information so I can remain current in the law enforcement field.
Okay. And what does that association focus on?
SWAT officers, tactical officers.
Okay. And are there any particular kinds of qualifications that are required for membership in the National Tactical Officers Association?
To my knowledge, you have to either be currently or have been a member of a tactical team or SWAT team.
Okay. Now, I think you said that you are not currently a member of that association, but are you current with the body of knowledge that is discussed by that association?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. And I think you mentioned that you were one time a police officer. Is that right?
25-year police officer, retired from the city of Austin in 2000.
Okay. Did you have any experience on patrol?
Yes, sir. I was assigned as a patrol, in a patrol function for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
The first 5 of that was in uniform patrol, and the next 6 was in and out of uniform, but more out of uniform.
All right. And did you have any experience as a training coordinator?
Yes, sir. I was a full-time instructor the last 3 years before retiring at the academy, teaching both in-service and recruits.
All right. And did you have any experience as a member of the SWAT team of the Austin Police Department?
8 years.
All right. Were you ever involved in any sort of investigative units?
3 years as an investigator in CID.
All right. And would you describe for the hearing examiner the kind of things that that you trained officers during your time as a training coordinator?
Trained officers on a number of the physical skills involved in using force, as well as the concepts behind what force is reasonable and when officers can use force.
Could you describe for the hearing examiner the kind of physical skills that you instructed officers of the Austin Police Department on?
Both basic and advanced firearms training for both handgun and shotgun. Did also do some rifle classes, but we really weren't that popular back then. Hand-to-hand combative skills, also known as defensive tactics, baton, taser. I think that pretty well covers it.
Okay. And what kind of defensive tactics are you familiar with in your training profession?
Well, there's a number of different programs out there for what we call defensive tactics or combative skills. Some of them are canned programs. Some of them, a lot of agencies go out and look at the different programs and sort of build their own program. So there's people teaching strikes and kicks. There's people teaching joint manipulation. There's people teaching mixed martial arts. There's a whole host. It's a very mixed bag.
Okay, and in your time as a trainer, did you ever learn of a concept or a term called a continuum of progression?
Yes, sir. The force continuum has been used as a training model in police departments for pretty much as long as I can remember. It's a great tool for teaching the concept on use of force.
All right. And what are the elements of that continuum of progression? Progression.
Progression.
Yes.
Although it's actually not a use of force, all the continuums usually start with officer presence, and it's merely a way of representing to a police officer the options available to him in using force. So it starts with officer presence, goes to verbal direction, giving orders. Next, this varies from agency to agency, but usually there's some kind of empty hands where you're not striking or hitting people, but you're just using physical strength. And then hard hands where you're actually delivering strikes and blows. And again, these vary somewhat. Many of them then incorporate OC spray, and where they incorporate it varies. Taser, where they incorporate it varies. Nightstick, where they incorporate it varies. All of these tools then would be looked at as intermediate weapons, and then ultimately deadly force.
Okay. And I think you mentioned OC spray. Is that also known as a pepper spray in some departments?
Yes.
Okay. And I think you mentioned batons. Is that right? Is that also called a PR-24?
Well, the PR-24 is a specific type of baton that has a side handle, if you will.
Okay.
It allows an officer to deliver more power. And there are a number of other things you can do with the PR-24 that you can't do with a straight stick.
Okay.
Then there are ASPs, or expandable type batons, straight batons, metal batons, wood batons. So there's a whole host of basically clubs is what they are.
Does the use of a baton entail more force applied to a person than an empty hand technique or a strike with a physical person?
Depending on how it's used, yes, but invariably most continuums have the baton listed somewhere just under deadly force because of the potential for using a baton as deadly force.
Okay. And I also mentioned that on your continuum of progression that you had been dealing with at certain points of your professional career, you mentioned empty hands techniques. Can you elaborate on what empty hand techniques are?
Simply put, it's just using physical strength. Grab a hold of somebody and try to force them to do whatever you're trying to get them to do or to accomplish, whether you're physically trying to pull their hand behind their back to put handcuffs on them, or if you're trying to move them from point A to point B.
Okay. And are you familiar with combative skills training?
Combative skills and defensive tactics are really the same thing, slightly renamed. Primarily, the people that use the term combative skills, like myself, realize that in order to win a violent confrontation, you can't be defensive. So it's more of a mindset thing. If I'm teaching you defensive tactics and you're thinking that all you can do is defend yourself, eventually you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. Combative skills is just a slightly different approach to where when the time is appropriate, you have to become offensive in order to actually overcome someone's who's trying to resist you.
All right. And are there different situations that require different sets of combative skills?
Oh, yes.
What is the other two? What are the categories of situations that require different uses of combative skills?
Well, if someone is trying to hurt you, obviously the best way to stop them from hurting you is to become offensive and do what is reasonable and what the situation dictates that needs to be done to stop that assault.
Okay. And so the use of combative skills is determined by the environment in which the officer finds himself. Is that right?
The environment is definitely one aspect that needs to be considered in deciding what force option would be most appropriate.
All right. And so is there a difference between a routine situation and a high-risk situation when considering the use of combative skills?
Well, in any use of force situation, the ultimate goal is to gain voluntary compliance as quickly as possible, but in a high-risk situation, that becomes more urgent.
And would you please describe for the hearing examiner what a high-risk situation is?
Any situation that the officer has knowledge where the potential for injury to himself or someone else is elevated. It could be because of the crime involved. If you're stopping an armed robbery suspect, obviously that's a higher risk than if you're stopping just someone for speeding. The environment that you're in and the number of officers present versus the number of people who could potentially become combative present. So there's really, that's an almost endless number of things that we could list as to what becomes a high-risk situation.
All right, and I think you said that sometimes the environment and the number of people involved can constitute a high-risk situation, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Right. Did you yourself, as an officer with the Austin Police Department, ever patrol a high-risk situation?
Numerous times. I was assigned, not permanently, but temporarily at a number of times in the downtown bar district. And in Austin on Friday and Saturday nights, that's wall-to-wall people, shoulder to shoulder.
All right, and so what are some of the factors when you were doing that patrol, the downtown bar district, that made that area a high-risk situation?
Well, the patrons that visit that area are typically younger, mostly college age. There is considerable amount of alcohol consumption. Along with that, there's also quite a bit of illicit drug use. So it is a potentially very violent and volatile, violent environment to work in. And when a police officer goes to make an arrest in that situation, it can very quickly deteriorate because the people around you, now more than ever, tend to be very vocal and sometimes actually physically involved with that arrest. They will actually try to take your prisoner away from you.
Are you saying that, you said now more than ever, are you saying it has not always been that way, things have gotten different?
Okay. It's always been that way, but it has increased exponentially because of the, I guess we could call it the war on police if you want to believe it has gone that far, but the attitudes that are current because of all the exposure of the social media, the cell phones, the instant information sharing. People are really quick these days to interfere with or at least become involved with arrests and express their dislike of what's going on, and actually, again, like I said, not unusual for them to become physically involved with these confrontations.
And when you say interfere, are you saying that it's limited to only taking pictures or using words, or are there other forms of interference?
No, sir. I could show you numerous videos where police officers are attempting to arrest one person and somebody comes up out of the crowd and attacks the officers, and then sometimes that deteriorates to a full-blown riot.
All right. Are you familiar with the term of escalation?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
What does escalation mean to you?
Escalation means that the situation is deteriorating, getting worse, the level of violence is increasing.
All right. And what is an officer supposed to do in an escalating situation?
Resolve the situation as quickly as possible, and if he is able to do so, remove himself and or a prisoner if he has any from the area.
Okay. Are high-risk situations, are high-risk situations that require de-escalation of settings?
A police officer is trained to de-escalate whenever possible. That is contingent upon a number of issues. The primary one is the amount of resistance you're receiving from the person you're trying to control. But absolutely, anytime you can use less force instead of more force, it's better for everybody concerned.
Okay. Your curriculum vitae this is what I had you turn to. You don't have to look at it, but it's contained in exhibit number 30, correct? Your
Yes,
resume?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've been trained by a number of entities, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And one of those was the Texas DPS, is that correct?
Numerous times, yes, sir.
And one of those was the FBI, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And now, you're not currently a police officer with Austin PD, are you?
No, sir. I retired in 2000.
All right. And what do you do for a living now?
When I retired, I started a training consultant business. And so since retiring, I have been actively teaching police officers in use of force concepts and risk management, tasers, combative skills, firearms.
Okay. And do you have any other form of employment currently?
Well, that same company, I also do what I'm doing here, which is provide expert testimony and expert witness and consulting work.
Okay. You do these things in civil cases?
Both civil and criminal, and I work both sides of the bench, if you will.
Okay.
Not of the bench, excuse me, sir, but both sides of
Of the bar?
Of the bar.
All right. And so what are some of your expert witness qualification categories? Are you an expert in defensive tactics and combative skills?
Yes.
Are you an expert in handcuffing and total appendage restraint procedures?
Yes.
Are you an expert in the use of batons or billy clubs?
You know, yes, I am, but I would say that I'm an ASP instructor, but I have not taught an ASP or baton class in a very long time. So it is possible there are some current trends that I've overlooked, although I doubt it. I do try to stay current.
All right. Have you recently attended any conferences regarding use of force instruction?
Since retiring, I've attended 3 to 4 conferences just about every year.
Okay.
And some of those involve use of force issues. Some of them risk management issues. But like I said, I've stayed current by going out and continuing my education. Thousands of hours of training since retiring.
Okay, and those various conferences are also contained in your curriculum vitae, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any certificates in your field regarding the use of force?
Yes, sir. I couldn't list them all, but there are quite a few.
You have just about a page and a half worth of different certificates, correct?
There's quite a few, yes, sir.
And just 2 in particular that I'd like to bring to the hearing examiner's attention are you have a certificate in freestanding takedown. I'm sorry, you have a certificate as a freestanding takedown instructor, correct?
That's correct.
What does that mean?
It's simply a certificate that allows you to teach officers hopefully better ways to take